Canterbury to bring you qualifying in the Porsche Sprint Challenge USA West Series. Joey, we've already got some drivers that are showing themselves to be a bit of a surprise out here. So I think we could get some interesting shakeups for this grid.
Yeah, and we've had those 2 practices already. The drivers have had a significant amount of track time, and I think the biggest shakeup that I see is that we've had a lot of this cloud cover roll back in here this afternoon at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. So it was very cloudy in practice number 1, but then in practice number 2, the weather definitely burned off, and it was a beautiful sunny afternoon here outside of Monterey, but now that weather is kind of rolled back in.
So we have the drivers out on track now. Looking forward to seeing who can perform at what has proved a difficult one throughout the day in various series that have been competing this weekend. Multiple drivers having off, some of them taking some big damage. But thankfully, so far, nobody has seen any incidents here in the Porsche Sprint Challenge Series. So that's the good news. Let's hope it stays that way throughout this race. The drivers get these 20 minutes to try and set their quickest time. And then they will have to carry these tires over into the race. That is the big aspect of it that we need to watch out for, because one of the things they do in this series, Joey, is that carryover from the tires. So we've seen some put their lap down that they're happy with and then immediately head back in.
You always want to save as much tire as possible when it comes to the racing conditions. I know that qualifying is always important, and track position, you want to start as far forward on the grid as you possibly can, but you bring up an excellent point. The more laps you do on these tires here in qualifying, that means you're going to have to carry all of those laps into the race. The less laps you do on those tires, the better off they're going to be in terms of speed to start that race.
Watching an onboard here with Jim Walsh right now. Comes around that final corner to try and start his first flyer. We were talking earlier today during the practice sessions about how Jim is just running a partial schedule. He's had speed this season and has come close to finally getting that win in that Masters class, but hasn't quite managed to get it yet. This could be a great opportunity for him as he comes down through Andretti hairpin, and then it's into the infield section.
I think this is a great kind of explanation and just example of, yeah, this is a 20-minute session, but remember, you have those out laps. So Jim is actually on his first timed lap right now, and I bet you the second timed lap is probably going to be a little bit faster than the first timed lap. And by that point, there's only going to be about 15 minutes remaining. So the time, it clicks by rather fast in these qualifying sessions. You better get out there and get up to pace quickly.
Indeed, and as we've also mentioned before, that they have both the Caymans and the GT3 Cup cars sharing the track in this series, different from the North America series. So the drivers will have to potentially deal with that during this qualifying session. Finding yourself a clear run will be critical as we get ready for the first times to come across. Let's see what sort of marker we have, if they can match what they did earlier in the day.
Looks like we're still waiting for a few to officially cross the line right here. So, like I said, just these sessions, it says 20 minutes, but it's actually only about 15 minutes, maybe 17 minutes of actually being able to go out there and produce a lap time. And it looks like we do have our first couple on the board, led by Scott Blend at a 128.7 in that 992 GT3 Cup Masters class. But I expect these times to continue to fall.
Chris Palomo, who is a bit new to professional racing, has certainly shown himself to be one to watch out for. He was very quick in the practice sessions. He doesn't have a time down yet here in qualifying, but we've been riding on board with him. So we watch that 992 Cup car head into the corkscrew, and Joey, you're looking like the car doesn't seem too happy.
Well, I think the car was plenty happy. I wasn't necessarily happy with the car placement going into the corkscrew. You always want to maximize your radius, maximize the width of this Laguna Seca racetrack, and he was just kind of creeping towards the apex up there at the corkscrew, which can kind of cost you just a little bit of time. I don't think it's going to cost you huge amounts, but definitely room to improve.
Among the first laps across, Scott Blend is your overall pole sitter. Make that Belomo. Chris has just put down a 127.4. Dusek is now in there ahead of Scott Blend. Matt Dusek still about 1.1 seconds behind, and Blend now goes faster. Daniel Hanley has taken the top spot. The times are absolutely tumbling down. Meanwhile, in the Caymans, it is Greg Checky, not Anna Checky, who is fastest.
Yeah, that's at a 1:30.888 for that number 72 yellow and white Cayman. I think the fastest times we saw out of the GT4s a little bit earlier today was about a half second faster than what our provisional pole sitter has currently laid down. So I think that, yeah, this session has started off with a couple really fast hot laps, but these drivers, they're just getting warmed up.
Do have a pit speed violation for car 49. That would be Greg Herback. Haven't seen notification that he has served that drive-through yet. Tom Rogers, though, goes second quickest of all the Caymans. He is behind, well, he was behind Greg Checky. Make that Jack Perriott the fastest of all the Caymans now. And boy, is it tight. Greg and Jack are separated by all of about 0.05 of a second.
I mean, you could throw Tom Rogers in there, too, because I see that Tom's lap time 1/100th of a second behind Greg Checky, and then you go back to Anna Checky, only 3/100th. So I'm looking at our top four in the Caymans right now, 30.83 to a 30.89. There's 4 cars separated there.
Jim Walsh is on 2 personal bests. He sits 4th of the GT3 Cup cars, 3rd in the Masters class. Does not improve, though, as he crosses the line. So last sector seems to have not been quicker for him. It looks like Tim Smith, though, and Tom Rogers both on 2 personal best first sectors. Let's see what they follow up with. It seems to be the real struggle, is if you can do the first 2 quick, can you do that last one just as fast?
I also noticed that Belomo took over that provisional top spot on the board. So right now the carrot to chase is a 1:26.1. That is the fastest lap time out of anybody right now as we ride on board with Anna Checky in her Cayman GT4 car. Coming up to the corkscrew here, you're going to jump hard on the brakes all the way down to what is second gear, and then here comes the roller coaster ride.
Down through the corkscrew. That looked pretty nice to me. Then through Rainy Curve as we check out the shots from above. Heading down towards the braking of turn 10. So far, so good. I think that might actually be her dad just behind her, too.
Yeah, I think they're kind of running together as a pair out there. We saw that similar thing happen in Practice 1 and Practice 2 earlier in the day. So Anna currently leading her father around, but it's actually Greg Checky that's fastest of them all in that Cayman class. I didn't even notice this, but a 1:30.1 out of Greg Checky that last time by. That's, I think, the fastest we've seen those GT4 cars go all of today.
Ooh, Scott Blend and Jim Walsh just improved. Scott up to second in class, Jim in third, but they are 3rd and 4th overall. It is still Belomo, our pole sitter, in the 286 machine. Brandon Hankins, 2nd overall, but 1st in the Pro-Ams in that 295. There's about a quarter of a second between the pair of them. We're almost halfway through this session. It's going away fast, and it's really proving that these drivers are hungry today. The way we're seeing these times drop.
Riding on board with Jim Walsh right here. He is currently P4 overall, but what I don't like is how many cars are directly out of his windshield here. And as a driver and qualifying, I don't want anybody obstructing my vision of brake markers. I don't want anybody erratically going off track in front of me. So I'd want to be looking for a little bit of a cleaner piece of racetrack, especially with how competitive Jim has been this weekend.
Right now, it's looking like that Solaris flying lap might go to Belomo. At this stage, he's now 4/10 of a second ahead of Hankins. Much bigger gap than what we saw before. And there's a little bit of backing up from Jim Walsh, trying to get himself some clear space on the final corner. Meanwhile, we are on board with Bellomo now, heading through turn 4, down towards 5. His last lap, and as I say that, now the first sector was a purple first sector. Chris is flying.
It was a purple first sector, but I don't know if you saw the mirror shaking coming out of what was turn number 4. I think he dropped 2 wheels all the way off on that dirt there. It wasn't significant, but you can tell Chris is definitely pushing the limit, and let's see if he cheats it. Yeah, he's still creeping towards the apex a little bit there at the corkscrew. I know when you're hard on the brakes, you can kind of just feed the wheel into it when you really need to keep it open, but he has gone purple sector 1, purple sector 2. Doesn't matter how you drive, he's getting it done.
By the way, we did have a spin at turn 2. That was car 250, which is Krigler. So he is back onto the track. Looks like he was able to resume nice and easy. That was very wide coming off of the final hairpin. What's that last sector look like? Not an improvement, but Bellomo still 4/10 ahead of Hankins, so he's not under threat right now.
And that's a good representative time of what the fastest cars have done all day today. A high 125 when it comes to those GT3 Cup cars. I'm noticing that Cayman class, we've been talking about how close the times are. First through, about 6th place right now, Joe. I'm noticing our pole sitter, a 130.1, all the way back to Tom Rogers, a 130.6. That's a handful of cars only separated by half a second.
What's interesting is this constant improvement seems to be keeping everybody out on track. Like we said, the less wear and tear you put on your tires, the better it's going to be for you at the start of the race. But nobody is able to rest on their laurels. Everything keeps changing. Jack Perriott, who we ride on board with right now, still second out of all the Caymans, and your pole sitter in the Pro-Am class.
I also just noticed that Jake Chu went up to 3rd place in that Pro-Am GT3 Cup class, and he's a new name out here. We've been talking about Tim Smith being a fighter pilot, but we actually have 2 fighter pilots in the paddock now. Jake Chu is one as well.
Yeah, flies for the Canadian Air Force, we found out. So very cool to have Jake come on down and give this a go. In fact, it sounds like he doesn't have a whole lot of racing experience. So when he was telling me that, I was mighty impressed with the pace that we saw out of him.
You're right. He said he'd done basically some testing, done some events overseas. Actually, it was pretty cool to talk to him about going and racing some cars over at Barcelona, doing some 2-day events over there. But you're right, pretty minimal experience when it comes to wheel-to-wheel racing, let alone on the GT3 Cup level. But he obviously knows how to handle a high-performance machine.
We've only had one car call it so far. Tom Rogers is coming to pit lane. He's 3rd in the Cayman Masters class right now, so that's the highest he's going to see in this session, and he might even still be bumped a little bit. Jim Walsh has come down into pit lane. We've got a couple cars in there. I see Wilgus in pit lane, Greg Checky, Tim Smith as well. Other than that, everybody else is on track. As now we check in with Scott Blend, who has surprised me, because like we kept saying, he's been so fast these last couple races, but he doesn't really quite seem to have it this weekend.
I think there's been a couple of other fast cars that might have surprised this number 245 out here, because you're right, he's typically up towards the sharp end of the field, and he is, right? He's inside the top 4. Yeah. He's definitely not slow out there. I mean, he's only half a second off of our overall provisional pole sitting time, but you're right, it's weird seeing him outside the top 2, really.
Yeah, so I guess it's a good thing when your off day is a 4th place. So, and who's to say that's where he winds up? Because he's still out on track. He could still improve. Walsh ahead of him is in pit lane, and so is Bellomo now. So only Hankins ahead of him is still out on the track, and Hankins is not in his class. This could help out Scott Blend really nicely.
So we get a shot. I believe this is Hanley coming into pit road, as well as one of the other Cup cars rounding through turn number 12 out here and rocketing down the front straightaway. That is the 243 of Hanley. Doesn't look like he is going to improve his lap time, so he stays what is 5th overall right now.
So Scott, that may have been Scott Blend that we saw coming into pit lane. Yeah, he might not actually have his bright yellow car this weekend, so we'll need to double check on that.
Checking in with Chiacchetti here in the 249 car. I think that he's been making steady improvement throughout the weekend. I think that's the goal of a lot of the drivers out here is basically get through this high-intensity weekend, right? This is a high-profile weekend being with IndyCar here. Nobody wants to mess up. Nobody wants to screw up in front of everybody. So I think that this number 249 car has done a tremendous job to keep improving those lap times because remember early in practice one, he was kind of swamped around with the Caymans, and now he's quite clear of them as well.
Tim Smith, by the way, has returned to the track now with about 5 minutes left to go. He sits second in the Masters behind Greg Checky. Could he catch up to him and get himself up to that top spot?
Going through turn number 5, coming up to this very fast turn number 6. We were talking about it earlier today. I think turn number 6 is the coolest corner on this racetrack. Everybody looks towards the top of the hill, the corkscrew. That is the most famous corner on this racetrack, but there's lots of challenging turns out there and several corners that it's kind of make or break for your lap time.
Did get confirmation that the black machine we saw coming into pit lane was Scott Blend. Usually he races in that bright yellow machine, but I guess in the USA West Series he has mostly switched over to the black and white car. Black and chrome, I believe it is, actually. Now seeing a lot more drivers come back into pit lane. We'll see whether or not this is them actually saying that's enough for this session or if they will come back out one more time. Chiacchetti out of the final corner. He sits 5th in the Masters class, and he stays there after that latest lap. But Brandon Hankins has now moved up to 2nd overall, and that is going to be pole for the Pro-Ams in the Cup cars. He is only a 10th and some change off of Belomo, who is also in pit lane.
Yeah, and I think really the only Pro-Am class car that's still out there is Wilgus that could potentially challenge, but he's about 1.1 seconds back off of that lap time that Hankins just turned as we're riding on board here with Jim Walsh. This is an interesting one. It shows him on an out lap, which means that he came into pit lane and decided to go back out there. I wonder if he's going to pull it off of the racetrack here on driver's left, or if he's going to, it looks like he's going to go after overall pole right now. And you got to remember, his fastest lap time, a 126.0, our provisional pole, 125.95. So he doesn't need much. He could steal this away.
Cars that are currently on track include Hankins, Walsh, as you mentioned, Wilgus. Josh Conley's back out there. Chiacchetti still running. Tim Smith. And then Henry Marshall. Everybody else is either in pit lane or has returned to the paddock. And we're down to the final 2.5 minutes, considering it does take somewhere in the realm of about a minute and a half to get around here for both of the classes. You've got to get out and get moving pretty much now.
Jim Walsh rounded his way through turn number 3. You see him using all of that exit curb on the entry. Same thing on the exit there through turn number 4. Coming up to turn number 5 here, could probably get out just a little bit further on entry and had to really catch the car at apex and off. I think that might kind of be the death of the lap time right there.
Unfortunately, he can get back around to start another one, it looks like. Yeah, he's still got 2 minutes, so he'll have plenty of time. They are allowed to complete their hot laps in this qualifying. So as long as you cross that start-finish line before the checkered flag, you are able to complete whatever lap you are on. Walsh heading down through Rainy Curve. Yeah, it doesn't look like he's pushing as hard because he knows this one is not the lap. So let's see if he's setting up for this one.
That's what I would do. If I'm a driver that's trying to go out there and grab overall, if you realized you made a mistake in turn 4, turn 5, whatever it may be, you just need to hit that mental reset button and say, hey, all right, this lap is junk. Let's focus on the next one. Let's just slow down, cool everything down, and get back going for one more attempt.
Back on board with Jim. Let's see what the line looks like. Early apex. For the first half, there was a huge correction, though, in the middle of the Andretti hairpin. That's not going to help things right at the start.
No, thankfully, though, turn number 2 is so slow speed. The only problem, though, is that when you get loose, and I think he's already off the gas, I just think that the car was probably not having the speed in it that he needed to. I mean, he only needed about a 1/10.5 out there, but when you push it to that absolute limit, sometimes instead of going 10.5 tenths, you actually go over that and go 11 tenths, and that's when you get in trouble.
I think this is smart from Jim. He knows that he doesn't need to risk the car from here. He is, in fact, off of his pace. Meanwhile, Brandon Hankins has displaced Belomo on the overall pole time. So we have a Pro-Am at the top over the Masters now. It's by about 0.2 of a second. A phenomenal final lap, and Hankins went quickest of anybody in the third sector. That's been the one we've seen a lot of drivers really stumble on.
I did not see this one coming, and I really should have, because Hankins has been up inside the top 3 all weekend long in our first 2 practices, and he pulled it out on the last lap of qualifying to grab that overall pole position. We already saw that Jim Walsh has pulled it off of the racetrack, so I can pretty confidently say that 295 is going to be your Pro-Am pole sitter as well as your overall pole sitter.
So, checkered flag is out. Anybody on a hot lap can complete theirs from here, but I'm not sure we have many cars that are outrunning at this stage. And for Hankins, this is phenomenal for him because of the fact that his rival in the championship, Daniel Hanley, is separated by 3 Masters drivers. So Daniel Hanley might be second here, but I don't think he's going to have an easy time trying to beat Brandon unless he can get by a lot of the Masters cars in the process. Still see Hankins out on track and Krigler. In fact, I think Hankins may have just gone by us. No, excuse me, that was Krigler that just completed the lap. So now we just simply wait for Marshall and Hankins. There goes Marshall. He stays put in 5th in the Cayman Masters category. Hankins, I mean, he can park it. Somebody has to be on the radio to tell him that you're already up there. You don't need to finish this lap.
That's probably what he's doing, and probably why we haven't seen him come around at all, is that he's on a cool-down lap, and yeah, that's exactly what just happened. So checkered flag is officially out. I think the big surprise, obviously, Hankins at the top of the board. What a qualifying session, but I'm also looking towards that Cayman GT4 field. I think that's Greg Checky's first provisional or first overall pole.
I'm pretty sure that is the case, so amazing job. It's in a series that he doesn't usually compete in. Of all things. Let's go through your order here. Brandon Hankins, your overall pole sitter in the Cup cars, with Belomo second overall, but the pole sitter in the Masters. From there, it's Jim Walsh, also second in the Masters, and Scott Blend third in the Masters category behind him. Daniel Hanley second in Pro-Am, but starting from behind Blend, and then Chu is third. From here, we'll go just with the overall position of our Cup cars, as Wilgus will start in 7th, Conley will be starting in 8th, Dusek in 9th, and Krigler in 10th. Then it'll be Chiacchetti starting in the 11th position. In our Caymans, it is going to be Greg Checky with what we believe is his first ever pole in that category. Jack Perriott going to be starting second from the Caymans, but on pole for the Pro-Ams. Then we have Tim Smith starting second in the Masters, followed by Anna Checky starting second in the Pro-Am. From there, we'll just go overall for our Caymans, as Tom Rogers is going to be starting in 16th, or excuse me, starting in 5th in that class. And then you go 6th for Greg Herback. Marshall will be 7th, and 8th will be Paul Bonderson. Before we go, I do want to give a very special happy birthday to my wife, Kaylee, who's celebrating hers today. I know she's probably not going to see this, but I wanted to get the chance anyways. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the first race of the weekend for our Porsche Sprint Challenge USA West Series by Yokohama. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.